Hi, welcome back to Highlander Heart. This time we're doing something novel.
Did you really? Okay.
Come on, Jeff, come on.
No, it's true though. He's correct. You're right. I mean, we're doing something novel.
We are doing something novel. We are doing this novel. Hey, there you go. We're talking about the Highlander novelization, which came out in 1986, 35 years ago.
For you, it did.
Well, we'll talk about that.
So, yeah. Okay. All right.
It's a fascinating novelization. If for no other reason, then there's lots of differences between the movie and the novel, and it stands to reason, I suppose. It's a 2-hour movie stretched out to a full sort of novel size, but some really sort of interesting additions and things.
Yeah, it was really good. I think I've talked about this before, but I'm a huge fan of special editions um, and getting extra information. But I've always been, ever since I was a kid, I've been a fan of novelizations of movies. Um, in fact, I was known to, because back in the day, I think people were less worried about people complaining about publishers were less worried about people complaining about things because there was no internet to instantly trash somebody. But novelizations for movies typically came out a month, sometimes more, before a movie, depending on how much lead time the writer got. So, as a big example I use is I read Empire Strikes Back a month before I saw it in the theater. And I'll be honest, you know what? Spoilers never have bothered me. It was always the story, the characters, and seeing all that, and just it was like, this is something new. Star Wars. I mean, we had Splinter of the Mind's Eye had come out right, not too long after the first movie, but this was like the first, direct continuation and continuing, words. It's important to be able to speak correctly when you're doing a podcast, right? So, but it was, to me, it was just like it was new Star Wars, and I just wanted to read it. I was a huge book fan. I was a kind of a marginal movie fan. So things like that never bothered. Same thing with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I read that a month before the movie came out. So, and all that did was make me even more interested in seeing the movie. I was like, I can't wait to see this with the actors and the music and all that. So I've always been a huge fan of novel tie-ins for movies. The Highlander one, I actually, by the time I found out that there was actually a novel based on the Highlander movie, since I had lived in the US, by that point, it was almost impossible to find unless you were prepared to pay a lot of money. Thankfully, though, as we'll talk about, in 1998, for some odd reason, it was finally published in the U.S. Probably because popularity had grown due to the sequels and the series and things like that. And so reading this the first time, I mean, I bought it and I think I probably read it in a night, just because I was like, oh, I want to find out. And it just, from the beginning, it has, a scene that's not in the movie.
Yeah.
And then it, progresses and moves forward. It's interesting to, the things we've discovered about previous scripts, to see things that might have been pulled from previous scripts, or, just weren't, we had talked about that were shot for the movie that were left out, sometimes originally left out in the US version, and things like that. So it's kind of interesting that this might be like the most complete official version of the first movie than even the movie itself, right?
Yes, well,
so
exactly. And that's the crazy thing, isn't it? Because normally when you read a novel that's made into a movie, you go see the movie and you think, oh, they left out all this good stuff, and it's this weird thing. It's exactly the same. You see the movie, then you read the novel and go, I left out all this good stuff. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that was some of the novelizations I read as a kid, even Empire and Star Trek 2, some other ones. When I'd go see the movie, I'm like, oh, where was that really cool sequence? Or where's that background material on a
yeah,
character? But again, like you said, you know, a 2-hour movie, if you just typed it out as straight the story, it would be a very short novel.
yeah,
So, you know, obviously they give, in order to have something meaty, they give the writers a little bit more license to, you know, do more character backgrounds and things like that. So, uh,
yeah. No,
but
absolutely. So you mentioned at the beginning that about the fact that there's a completely new scene that starts this,
yeah,
and it's true. There's and in fact, there's a sort of a shortened version of the scene, which is sort of right at the very beginning, which I'll read for just to so
yeah,
that it's short, so that people can kind of understand where we're coming from. So the book starts. The two heads, human and animal, hit the ground almost simultaneously, followed by a tangle of limbs. The victorious Kurgan reined his own mount and let out a scream of joy as lightning forked down out of the clear sky and into his body. For several minutes, the static electricity sought him out, arced into his giant frame. When the quickening was over, the dark warrior turned northwards. Now for the boy, Connor MacLeod, he said. And that's how it starts. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, like, okay, let's keep going, you know. It's
yeah, it
yeah,
definitely is a hook.
yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, I guess you could see why wanting to ground the movie in reality, you would see that you wouldn't start Highlander as we know it like that. But yeah, in terms of a novel, you know, it's yeah, that's a lovely little hook.
I
Um,
I would have loved the movie to have started with that. And then right after that, then you go to the wrestling scene, and that would kind of at the same time, I mean, it would, we had the flashbacks during the wrestling scene, but it still would be like a statement of, you know, wow, okay, so there's something about beheading, there's something about the past, and now we're seeing likely the, you know, the boy McLeod that he, you know, Connor that he's talking about is in present day. Whoa, what's going? That would have been a
yeah, yeah,
huge hook for the movie,
yeah. No,
you know.
absolutely, definitely.
So
So yeah, so that scene starts. So we get a little excerpt there right off the bat, and then we go into the scene proper. And effectively, this scene is the Kurgan facing off against a Mongol who's his third immortal opponent in his life. It sort of explains in that, and it's a really nice character building moment for the Kurgan. I mean,
yeah,
especially since this is the first character we're even reading in this book, and bearing in mind, you know, he's a very small part of the beginning of the movie as we know it. It's a nice character building. He sort of judges his opponent, and he figures out how to. Every time the Mongol comes to him, he rears his steed so that he can't get a shot in, and he kind of figures out how to get around that. And as you read in that,
yeah,
in that little bit, he chops the horse's head and the Mongol's head off at the same time with his massive broadsword, and takes the quickening,
yeah.
and then whoosh, then we're into the story. And this precedes, in terms of historically, the moment before he does that, and then he goes off to search for Connor MacLeod.
The other things I really like about that scene is it shows you right off the bat how physically intimidating and powerful the
Mm,
Kurgan is. I
yes.
mean, he takes the horse and the Mongol's head
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
same swoop. Um, and it also shows you that he isn't just the cartoonish
Mm,
villain, evil guy that he is portrayed as in the movies. Actually calculating.
yeah.
He observes. He, you know, strategizes, and so it adds so much more depth to him. And I like the fact that the Mongol's only the third immortal he's faced.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, but for the whole movie, put him and Connor on equal footing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, in the movie, it sounds like the Kurgan has been around for hundreds of years, and it's just this massively powerful, you know, guy who's just gone around whacking immortals left and right. And so I like that kind of equal footing that it puts them on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the novelization is littered with character development for the Kurgan, which I
Yeah,
think, we discussed this many times, and as
yeah,
we talk about Whedon's original draft and things like that, one of the few things that was really left lacking in the movie as it is.
yeah.
But yeah, so absolutely, we'll get to that as we go through. So following that, I think the next big difference, no, there are some subtle things as well. So we get Connor at the wrestling match, but we actually get a reason why Connor's at the wrestling match, which was a nice kind of idea, that he's there to kind of feed off the action, because he can't go into battle anymore. He's not, the times have changed, but he can go to a wrestling match
Yeah.
and is these people pummeling each other, and that somehow feeds his kind of I don't know, his kind of sort of Highland, his kind of brutish kind of Highlander aspect.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is kind of cool.
yeah. I kind of like that too, because it shows that Connor isn't this sophisticated moral Dudley Do Right guy the whole time. That there is part of him. Maybe it's because he's immortal. Maybe it's just because of how long he's lived and had to fight. He still kind of relishes the fight and the battle and that kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that totally makes sense why he would be at a wrestling match, as opposed to, well, we couldn't get any other sport to allow us to film at, so we'll do wrestling, I guess. And they wanted to give us money, So
yeah, exactly. It's nice that he found a
there's
reason.
an actual reason for it, and I was like, okay, that's cool.
So I think the next biggest, well, it's a whole new scene in the book, is where Connor and his cousins are going around recruiting, I think, for the battle against the Frasers. And there's a couple of things here, although I'm not sure we find out at this exact point, but the reason that the McLeods are fighting the Frasers is all to do with Connor's father being hung by the Frasers.
Yeah.
Which is
That's
why
a bit different.
yeah, absolutely. Again, we've got an impetus for something to happen. There's a reason for something to happen, rather than it just happening because it happens. When when they're in the Highlands of Scotland, of course they're going to be fighting each other.
We just fight. Yes.
Yeah, it's just a
They have a different last name. Their tartan's a different color. We're gonna fight.
I mean, to be fair, that stuff did happen, but there's still an impetus. There's still a reason, and it's it adds kind of value to that. But yeah, there's this whole scene with him and his cousins, and they get set upon by these guys, and they quickly kind of dispatch them, and that kind of thing, which was a cool little scene.
Yeah.
Sort of added a little bit of depth to Connor and all of that. Again, you wouldn't expect to see that in a movie. It's one of the scenes that would be cut for timing, especially if the movie's going to be 2 hours, as it is.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but it's nice to kind of to sort of read a little bit more about that. So yeah, we head into the battle with the Frasers, much as it is. But when the Kurgan turns up, he doesn't know who Connor is, and in actual fact, what he's doing is he's watching the Frasers to see who they don't kill.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, to kind of figure out who it is that he's supposed to kill, because of course, it's you didn't have Google, I guess. You just you can kind of figure it out that way. He's just trying to figure it out by seeing who they don't kill. And there's these lovely little moments of him in battle where he's watching these things happen around him, which we see in the film, like Father Rainey killing killing one of them, and giving the last rites. But it mentions in the book that he finds that amusing, and that's a lovely little touch that just speaks to the Kurgan's kind of dark sense of humor. How he would find that entertaining and
well,
funny.
It kind of plays in well with his irreverence in the church later too.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, and he's kind of
that's kind
of almost like mockery of religion and that kind of thing. So after all of the things take place in the car park and getting taken to the station, although he spends an extra night in the station in the book before he's released, I think.
Yeah.
He goes to the bar and, you know, kind of propositions Brenda in a roundabout kind of way. But it all doesn't happen at the same way. He leaves and then he comes back again to the bar at another time to ask about her, and then she follows him. And there's another scene between that one and that one. So it just kind of takes a little bit longer for these things to happen, I guess.
Well, the bar has really good Glenmorangie, so
Yeah, exactly.
got to spend some time there. So
But again, there's another one, you know, another great little Kurgan scene that isn't in the movie. Obviously, the kind of, you know, Gary's kind of crafted of him sort of roaming the streets and sort of being amongst all the lowlives and the sort of the druggies and the pimps and things like that, and kind of almost relishing in being in that sort of depravity, I guess.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you know, that's his vibe. That's what he likes to do on a Saturday night. He just likes to go and hang out in the streets, sort of blowing cocaine into drug dealers.
Well, it's like even though we're giving more depth to him, we can't let people forget that he shouldn't win the prize, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
you
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
still a bad.
Yeah, but you know, at this point, he's infinitely more interesting than Connor, as certainly in the book, anyway.
Kind of, yeah,
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 you know, it's who is this guy? Like, you know, like wow, like what's going on with this guy? Whereas, at least I think you do still get more character development through Connor, in just the little bits and pieces that he picks out in writing the story and the way he's feeling about things and stuff like that. There's a lovely bit actually where it just describes when Connor met Heather for the first time, after he's been sort of evicted from his village and he's out of the yoke, and how Connor meets Heather and Heather's father, Heather McDonald. That's the first time I think that she gets that name.
yeah.
Employs Connor to work in his croft, and they, you know, give him a job and whatever, and that's kind of how their romance is sort of sparked,
Well,
which is quite sweet.
again, a little bit more depth, other than he left his village and now he's with a woman. It's like, oh,
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, where did this come from? Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it fills out all sorts of little things like that. And then there's just moments like, within the movie, yeah, we know that he has Brenda's book. So I think we just kind of assume that he had that because it's about metallurgy and swords and things, and that's kind of his thing. But in the book, he pops down to the local library and gets it out. Again, it's not a scene we need to see in the movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
A good little shout out to libraries, though, and how useful they can be, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, go to your local library. COVID restrictions.
No Amazon back then. You had to go to the library. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is a great little moment where he's reading the book, and he gets to a chapter on balance, which then provokes a memory, sat next to his fish tank, about Ramirez teaching about balance. So a lovely little segue that isn't in the film, that just comes in quite naturally.
Yeah.
You could almost imagine that being a cutscene, that that they sort of missed out.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it would have just been lovely. Yeah, these are the kind of things that you wish had been filmed and cut so that we could have eventually gotten the inevitable like 30th or 40th anniversary full version of, with all that in there, right? But
Yeah.
Oh well.
I know. But we have the novelization. We can see that in our mind.
Yes.
We can see it in our mind, Joe. That's
Yes. It's part of headcanon.
Absolutely. So here we get the reference of Connor going hunting when Heather leaves. He leaves Heather with Ramirez on the night that Ramirez is beheaded by the Kurgan. So we know where he's disappeared to, why he's not there. which is cool. And it also details after Heather dies, what Connor does with his life for the next couple hundred years, very swiftly.
Yeah.
He heads down to London to study, and then by the 1800s has disappeared off to the Far East in somewhat of a contradiction to Highlander 3, where he does it almost immediately, apparently, without getting changed.
Yes, exactly. He really liked those clothes.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just kept them and thought, it seemed like the right thing to wear in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
But I think probably one of my favorite scenes that's in the novelization, not in the movie, is the scene with Castigear. So they have a preemptive meeting before the bridge when Connor's in a bar, and that's great, and they kind of like get to kind of chat or whatever. But there's this great moment where they're set upon by a gang. I would love to see this.
I know. More Castigear.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. The idea that these two are just sort of like just hanging out, and this gang of street thugs just come along and pull out switchblades, and you've almost got a that's not a knife kind of situation going
on. Boy, did you guys pick the wrong folks to try to mug.
Yeah. But I think it would have been such a lovely scene, if not just because you would have seen a bit more of Connor's playful side. I can imagine it being a little bit like that scene in Endgame with Connor and Duncan, where they fight special guest appearance by the Edge in the forest.
No. It's special guest appearance by the WWE's The Edge.
Sorry, Edge. Yes, thank you.
Oh, cuckoo.
Oh, looks heavy, huh?
Looks like you lost your edge, lad.
It would have just been a really nice kind of uplifting moment. And I guess in a way, we did get that post Castigear, on the bridge with the Boston Common scene. There was, but it would have been nice to have seen the modern day Connor still have that playfulness, or have the playfulness brought out by having somebody that he has that camaraderie with.
And again, it gives. I mean, we have more times in the past that Castigear and Connor have met, so you really nails home how long they've been friends, and it's almost kind of like what we see later, like you said, with he and Duncan, how many times they did run into each other, the fun they had and their bond. So to me, that only strengthens the scene on the bridge, but then also the loss of Castigear. So
no, absolutely. And it's nice, actually, and it's interesting that, I mean, obviously we know there's a cut scene. There is an actual cut scene of Connor and Castigear in the bar with Bedso, and it's interesting that this kind of reflects that. We don't know whether Garry was aware of that scene, or whether that scene was cut, whatever. But there was a very clear need to embellish Castigear as you say, as a character, if for no other reason, just to kind of reflect Connor having somebody in his life that he's known for a long time. That would have been really lovely. But like you said, we get flashback to let's see, when was it? 1879, he says, not at all looking at his notes. And the Zulu Wars, and when MacLeod was serving with the 17th Lancers. I remembered that off the top of my head, not off the screen.
Sure.
And they so like you say, there's some great little sort of backstory there, which is great. And so, but we still get the Boston Common stuff, but we get the scene now. Here's where it's interesting. We get the scene where he actually insults the wife
Yes.
of
The bloated warhog.
yeah, exactly. Which is nice. So he's trying to avoid her. She's coming onto him. He runs through the bedroom, and she chases after him, and she's like stripping naked, and then her husband walks in, and then it's challenges into a duel. Is that the scene they shot? Is that the scene of him with the orange? I have to know. Is it's my life work to find out where this scene came from, like what was in the scene. One day.
You just know it still has to exist somewhere. Somebody has it in a closet somewhere, or it's in an archive. Even if it's not original negatives, it's out there.
Got to be something.
Yeah.
So so we get that, and then that leads on to Boston Common and things like that. And then Kurgan kills Castigear, and then pops off to a local bar, has a drink.
Yes.
But again, it's another speaks to another part of his nature, of his character, that he has this "I don't give a damn" attitude, and he's just he just beheaded somebody in an alleyway. He's jumped into a car, stolen a car, ripped the roof off the car, chucked the occupants out, driven around the corner, probably parked it up on the curb, probably next to a parking meter, and just hopped out and just gone into a bar, and he's sitting there, just this huge man, and just gonna go for a little drink. Crazy.
He probably parked on the curb at a handicap spot,
Exactly.
Because that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah, he probably cruised around trying to find one, and then
exactly.
So that's cool. Has some more embellishments about some of the other characters as well. And Moran has a wife in this, which obviously wasn't a part of the movie, but that's something that Gary's added.
Yep.
And as we know, that again from the actual deleted scenes, there was a suggestion of a romance between Moran and Rachel. So that's something that they don't marry, but it's just one of those things. And then for some bizarre reason, possibly just padding, Brenda goes to Miami.
Yeah.
To see her dad, as you do. In the middle
Couldn't
of
call him, had to go see him,
why not?
I mean, not a bad job if you can just up and fly at a moment's notice from New York to Miami. I mean, I know they're on the same coast, but it's still kind of pricey. Just to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously within the book we get a little bit more detail about Brenda and her background, and in this, there's evolution of things in Whedon's original draft. I think he was the district attorney, and in this, I think father's like a watchmaker or something. There's no connection to the police. But for whatever reason, she decides to go to Miami. There you go. Takes up a few pages, I guess. Something to do. And then we kind of head towards the end of the movie. And there's a lovely little car chase with Bedso on the way to Silver Cup, as he's trying to find Brenda. All the while being very wary of, at some point he can see Brenda on the Silver Cup sign, but he's like, where's the Koga? Right. And the battle kind of plays out, and there can be only one and all that. Shing, 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 shing. And Connor wins the prize. All well and good. Then he goes back to see Rachel, and tells her that that Russell Nash is dead, effectively.
Yep.
And that's kind of that. And then hops off to the airport with Brenda to tour Scotland for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, hey, person I consider my daughter. You're never going to see me again. Peace out. I'm heading off to, heading off with a woman. See ya.
Yeah, I got my new life now.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry about it. Never mind about the all the years that we spent together.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
So yeah, offer a little jaunt around Scotland, and yeah, I mean that's kind of it really. It's sort of the Return of the King style sort of multi-ending, I suppose, just drawn out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Of kind of what happens next. But yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting book. I think it has a lot of great elements that were needed. I think especially atop of the list, Kurgan development. And we know from speaking to Brandon Jerwa when we were talking about the comic books in the comic book episode that that paved a lot of the way for the the two-parter for that, which was great. So yeah, I think the book's did a lot of good for just just growing the kind of the mythology, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, like you said, especially the Kurgan bits that were later used for the comics that are, I suppose, depending on how you view the comics, that are now officially canon. But yeah, just great character development, and even the background on Heather, the war with the Frasers and stuff, really is not anything that it doesn't contradict anything that we saw on screen. I mean, it all still fits. So if you wanted to, this could be, like I said, the definitive version of the first movie. I mean, it doesn't contradict anything we saw on screen or anything that's mentioned in the series for the most part. It just adds depth and brings out the characters more. So
yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. And in that respect, it's a fantastic addition to Highlander lore, really, which is great. It's funny though, because it's so many questions that I would have for the author. It would be great if we could speak to him.
That, we should figure that out. We should do that.
Yeah, we should. Actually, should we do that now?
But let's do it. Let's bring him on and have a chat.
Do that now.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Garry Kilworth, thank you for joining us. It's a tremendous honor to have you here.
Well, thank you very much.
No, it really is. I think it's one of those things where Highlander mythology is so precious. People talk about sort of things that are canon. Well, immortals can do this, they can't do this. This came from here. This part of the story comes from here. And your novelization brought an awful lot of that to the franchise that we know today. And I'm really interested to find out how a lot of that came about. And in fact, how you came to the project in the first place, although it was 35 years ago, so I'll forgive your memory.
Well, it's not a very exciting story. I had a very good friend, a collaborator that I used to write with, called Robert Holdstock. I don't know whether you ever heard of him. And he got an offer to write a novelization. These novelizations were quite frequent in the 70s and 80s. I don't see very many of them about today, but maybe they are. Maybe I just don't notice them. But he did John Borman's The Emerald Forest.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that looks like a good deal. So I said to my agent, look for something for me. And she did. She found Highlander, which was a good thing. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So whereabouts was the film in terms of production, pre-production, post-production, when you became involved and when you started writing?
Well, the film was finished, but they had 3 endings. They took me to a cinema in London and they showed me the film.
Okay.
Straight away.
Yeah.
Well, I had 2 weeks before the film was going to be released.
Right.
and I had to finish the book within 2 weeks, between
Wow.
the 14 days. I work like stink. Um, and they said, we've got 3 endings and we don't know quite which one to use at the moment. So you'll have to make up your own ending, which I did. Yeah, so I watched the film. I mean, I was just blown away when by that first scene with Queen and the Highlanders coming up over the clans coming up over the hills. Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant opening that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where it was.
Okay, that's fascinating. So after that, did they give you a script? Just because I'm sure they couldn't have relied on your memory just of
They
watching
gave
one.
me a script. I've got it here.
Oh, really?
Wow.
There you go.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Thick,
Wow.
but that is only the dialogue script.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Um, there's no description in there, and no scenes.
No.
It's simply dialogue. So I had to remember the film and put it together with the dialogue.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not preempting anything when I say I had to. In those days, I was writing longhand and then typing the manuscript up afterwards. I couldn't do that.
No.
So I did what the 1940s crime novelist did. I hammered it away on my typewriter.
Nice.
I never found that an easy thing to do, because when you're writing longhand, you can scribble out and write above it, and this XXXXX blanking something out was so slow. But so I worked for for about 9 hours, 10 hours a day, just typing it up. I had to, it had to be done. Had to be finished within the 2 weeks, and the only way I could do that was to type it straight away. And I put in a rather messy manuscript, and yeah, got done.
So did you have any revisions? Did they kind of, or was there no time for that? They just
No, there wasn't any time for anything. It was
agree.
yeah. I mean, nowadays, I'll revise something 9 times before I even send it in and to the copy editor, who will then come back and say, well, shouldn't you do this and shouldn't you do that? But no, it was really flat out stuff.
Oh.
Did they at least have like any character stills or any stills from the movie to give you? They just gave you the dialogue. That was it, huh?
That was it. That was it, Joe. Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible. So obviously there were some blanks that you would have to fill to make a novel, sort of turn a 2-hour movie into a novel. Did they ever give you any kind of guidance as to, you can do this, you can't do this, or did they just sort of like?
No, they gave me free hand, and said, it's all yours. So obviously, an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. I'm not sure how long the film was, but you've obviously got a lot of packing to do to fill a book.
Yes.
And but I really love the craft of writing, so I enjoyed it immensely. I just thrive on it. I still do. I'm 80 years old now, and
Really?
I'm still
Oh,
writing
good on
mad.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Mm.
I think one of the things I loved about the embellishments and the things that you added to the book most was your treatment of the villain. I think it's within the film as it stands, he's very caricaturish. There's not an awful lot of depth to him. But I think you really kind of helped to kind of.
But he's a great character, isn't he? He's a great
absolutely.
character.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
he's the third biggest character in the film, and I just loved trying to explore his background, you know, going back to his roots, and yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. What made you decide to put that scene with the Kurgan and the Mongol preceding the kind of the fight with him and Connor at the very beginning of the book that didn't exist at all in the movie? That was quite an interesting choice to make.
Well, yeah, it's trying to hook the reader, you know.
Yeah.
And so you've got to do something pretty dramatic,
Yes.
to get the reader in.
Yeah.
And as I said, I loved him as a character. So you know, evil bastard, but I loved him.
He was. Yeah. No, he really was. But you added some depth to him, which I thought was lovely. Just this little moment. There's a moment in the where the MacLeods are fighting the Frasers, and the priest kills someone, and then, you know, and then does the rites. But you acknowledge that you say that Kurgan acknowledges that he finds it amusing. And I just think, God, if that had even just been a little touch in the movie, it would have added so much sort of depth in, to see that kind of playful, kind of morbid kind of humor in him. Yeah, that was such a lovely little touch.
mimicking it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That was great. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you're aware, there were, over the years, there's been all sorts of Highlander things, one of which was a comic book series based on the Kurgan. And I think it was it 3-episode run?
It was two issues. It was a
2
two-part.
issues, sorry.
Yeah.
It felt like 3. It felt like a much bigger story, I think. But they drew quite a bit of inspiration from your backstory of the Kurgan for that. So that was fantastic to see.
That's the first time I've heard that, and I'm really quite pleased by that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was lovely that they would sort of return to that.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few little touches and little things that you added in there that have kind of been accepted by fans, and even in ways brought into when it went to a series and things like that. Did you follow Highlander, any of the sequels or any of the series or anything going forward afterward?
Yeah, I was aware of them, and you know, and I looked them up occasionally. I haven't actually watched. I saw the second film. I can't remember a lot about it actually, but you know, things move on, don't they? So
Yeah,
I'm into a new project, and I've seen a lot of the spin-offs around. I haven't sort of indulged in them too much, you know.
Actually, it's an interesting point you brought up about the different endings. We've done quite a few sort of episodes on Highlander, and one in particular on the sort of deleted scenes, and there are other sort of scenes that they shot that they didn't use, and some that they didn't shoot at all. Do you recall the different endings that they suggested?
I think they had a couple of really dramatic endings, I think, that would probably lead into the next you know, the sequel. But I think this is from what I remember now, it's a rather romantic ending, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And not a hugely dramatic one.
Yeah. Oh, I'd be interested to find out if what the other endings might have been.
Yeah.
They never did tell me. No.
No. Another thing I was interested to learn about was, so I have a copy of it here. Now it says here that it's Gary Douglas and not Garry Kilworth.
When they first brought the book out, for some reason it was my doing, but I wanted to do. My name is Gary Douglas Kilworth.
Right.
Okay, and I thought I'll bring it out under a pseudonym. I don't know why. Um, they only kept that for a couple of years, and then they reverted back to my my normal writing, my main writing name. And I guess I had a couple of books that were doing well at the time. This was Grafton who published the book.
Yeah.
So they didn't even ask me, actually. They just did it.
No, and I noticed they spelled, I think it was this one or the hard, I've got both of them here. This one or the hardback, but they spelled your name wrong inside as well.
Yeah, one R. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a bane of my life, that.
Oh.
So you mentioned that you had 2 weeks to do this novelization. And I'm assuming, novels before and after that, you had much longer lengths of time. Have you ever just maybe as a creative exercise challenged yourself to do a novel in like 2 weeks or a short time span?
No, I haven't, Joe. I normally take about 4 or 5 months to do a novel, and because in this case I did research the Kurgan, or the Kurgans, the people, but I and with a normal novel, I have to do a lot of research. Even if it's, a space opera, you still got to get your facts right.
Right.
So, what I do is I write in the morning, and then I research in the afternoon for the next day.
Okay.
Yeah. 2,000 words a day I do. So.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's a great pace, actually. Nice.
So, I mean, 35 years, it's been a long time. Has your kind of, I mean, always interested, I do a little bit of writing myself, and I know Joe does as well. I'm always interested in people's writing styles and things like that, and how they sort of approach something. Has that, for you, has that changed over the years? Or have you always sort of approached story writing in a sort of a similar way? The novelization is a little bit different because you're being given a story.
You've got a background, yeah.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, in terms of kind of like from memory process to page and things like that, how has that kind of moved on over the years?
I don't believe in inspiration.
Okay.
No, I believe in getting down and doing it, and things come as you write. Sometimes even with a short story, I'll just start off with a title, and then work from there.
Yeah.
That doesn't always work, but I've never really had any problem with ideas. I've written 95 books now.
Wow, amazing.
So I don't want to sound arrogant, it's just that I love doing it. I wanted to be a writer ever since I was 12, and I wanted to be a science fiction writer ever since I was 12. So, I still enjoy it. But
you still writing now? Are you still?
Yeah. I slowed down a bit. I used to write 3 books a year. I'm down to one every 3 years. So
that's all right. I did read online, and of course I'll take this with a grain of salt, but I saw in a couple places that you said that you kind of prefer writing short stories as opposed to novels. Is that true? And if so, why?
Because I think I'm better at short stories, and I find them more exciting to write. It's just one of those things, in fact, my last two books of short stories,
right.
It's almost always science fiction, horror, or fantasy. I'm not much interested in crime or any of the other genres.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Nice.
really good. Are you inspired by sort of film much? Are you much of a film goer? Or?
Oh yeah. I love film. Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, it is, obviously a huge, not at the moment, the last year, nothing's come out, but there's, there are some great things that come out. Actually, that's a good point. Given that you love film, have you ever considered sort of writing a screenplay, or have you ever sort of had any of your books kind of, picked up for potential film?
Yes, I thought of, uh, I did try once, I think, and but a literary agent will send it on to a theatrical agent, and they're pretty tough people to get past.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had 3 books purchased by film companies. The last one was a young adult novel of mine called Attica.
Okay.
And Warner Brothers bought it,
Mhm.
and they paid the big money at the end, which you don't often get. And they sold it to Johnny Depp, who was going to do the film in 2013.
Okay.
But his company, Infinitum something or other, yeah, it crashed just before that, so it never got made. It's just the story of my life. Three times that's happened.
Oh.
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 Well, there's always hope. I think there's always,
Yeah.
you have to believe that these things will happen.
What will make me angry is if they make it after I'm dead. It will. I shall get very annoyed.
Well, and I noticed, so it seems like the trend over the last probably decade or so is, to create these big, actually probably longer than that. And I don't know if this is because of the popularity of Game of Thrones, but there always seems to be this need to have a series, 10 book series, 5-book series, and things like that. When you create a new book, new characters and a new storyline, do you think in the story and that book, or are you thinking, well, maybe I should leave things going so that I can continue that?
Occasionally I do leave a book so that there's a possibility of a trilogy, or not much more than that. I wouldn't go much further than that, because I would get bored writing the same people. And I did 2 or 3 trilogies under pseudonyms, actually, fantasy trilogies.
Yeah.
But yeah, George Martin's done well. I used to go to workshops with him in the UK.
Really?
We were both, junior writers. We used to call him Railroad because of his initials in the middle, George R.R. Martin.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Amazing.
I have to remember that, and if I ever get the opportunity, I will call him that and see what happens.
I don't know whether he likes it or not.
I guess you'll find out, Joe.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy, George.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So what's your current project that you're working on? What sort of...
Well, I just finished a book. Show it to you now. It's called Blood Moon, and it's a novella, actually, and it's a reverse of the werewolf. It's a wolf that changes into a man once a month.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
On the dark of the moon, not on the not in full moon, on the dark. There's 3 days of the month which are the dark of the moon, and that's it, when the wolf changes into a man.
Fantastic.
Interesting.
That's
I like that.
Yeah. I can't believe I've never thought of that. That's really clever.
I know.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. And do you have anything else in the pipeline? Have you got the brain whirring for another story?
Oh yeah, I'm doing a book called 12 Giants at the moment. So I'm writing a story. I love to get hold of themes. The book before this one was Elemental Tales, which I took all the metal elements
Right.
and made each metal element a central part of a story.
Yeah.
So there's a story on gold, there's a story with silver, and they're all, again, science fiction, fantasy, or horror. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Nice. You know, I always, when I get a writer to bend their ear, I always want to start digging into the nuts and bolts of writing and craft and all that. And I don't know that we have time for that, but you know.
Well, the thing about writing is that I did a lot of workshops in the beginning. They're so helpful when you go with a group of other writers, especially those who are interested in your own genre. And I find that every writer has a different approach. There's no formula for it, is there?
No.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, so I guess one of the last questions I would have would be, I'm in my 50s now, and much like you, from being a kid, I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote, a lot of stories, a lot of things that no one will ever see, and things like that. But did you find that kind of the things that it interested you and the way that you write, the characters you write about, have changed over the years, or are you still kind of in that same area of interest?
That's a good question. I hadn't even considered it, but yeah, I think they have. I think my characters have got harder, right? In the sense of their the grittiness. They were quite. I think they were quite weak when I first started writing. I didn't sell anything until I was 36 years of age. So before that, I'd written 4 novels and about 50 odd short stories, which are still in my sock drawer. And occasionally I take one of the ideas from those and I build on it now. But I could see how weak it was at the time.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I could keep asking questions for the next hour or so, and I'll not do that.
I did teach creative writing for a while, and the first thing I always say is you can't expect to pick up a tennis racket and play like Bjorn Borg.
Yeah.
You've got to practice.
Yeah.
And those years that I led up to my first publication, I think were the practice years.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and really important kind of time.
Yeah.
For a writer. Yeah.
And reading. I mean, I think reading is so important. And getting the first lines have always fascinated me. And one of the best first lines I remember is from The Siege of Trench's Farm, which became Straw Dogs. Not Straw Dogs. Was it Straw Dogs?
It might have been. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Dustin Hoffman. Yeah. And the first line of that book is that the moment Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, there were men in English country villages who'd never been more than 15 miles from their own front door. And I just think that is so brilliant,
Yeah, that is actually a pretty amazing first.
Yeah.
No. Yep.
Yeah. No, you're right though. That first sentence you read is always super important.
Yeah.
Which is, as you say, a very good reason why the novel of Highlander starts with that. And in fact, in the novel itself, it even starts with a much shorter version, which just really pulls you in, and then carries on with the chapter of the sort of fight with the Mongol and things like that. It's very important, to get that reader involved.
Yep.
Well, look, Gary, thank you so much for
No,
doing.
thanks, guys. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, absolutely has.
Wow, that was really cool, man.
Yeah, I know.
Talking to the man himself, we got our answers, you know.
Absolutely. I can't believe he wrote that book in 2 weeks. And
really good book for 2 weeks. I mean, that's crazy.
yeah. I mean, but unheard of to write a book in 2 weeks and send it off and get no notes. I mean, my God. But there you go. Incredible. Such a lovely guy as well. Such a lovely guy.
Oh yeah, he's wonderful. I could have talked to him for hours. I mean, he's
Yeah. No, and the George R.R. Martin stories were amazing.
I'm gonna use that as I'm gonna take that opportunity someday. I swear. No.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe I will.
So I hear your old writing buddies used to call you Railroad.
Yeah. Click. End of interview.
Well, it's been fantastic sort of delving into the novelization and to find out some of the amazing details about how it came about. It's fantastic. So yeah, loved it every minute. Really, really cool.
Yeah.
So with that, I would just like to say thank you for watching. This is Grant.
I'm Joe.
And that was Gary.
Hold fast and don't lose your heads. Here's a tip: if you have to sign one of your own books to a woman, I usually put "in memory of our one night of forbidden ecstasy." If they're in the bookshop, they go.